Hello, I'm James Fitzsimons and welcome to The Career Scoop, a podcast about career progression, advice and experiences aimed at assisting those who are in career transition. Today my guest is Declan Ryan. Declan has been involved in the aviation industry for over 35 years and is currently Executive Chairman of Viva Air, located in Colombia. He has also been extensively involved in philanthropy through the One Foundation and is involved with Social Entrepreneurs Ireland. I'm delighted to welcome you to the show, Declan.
Thank you, James.
Great. I would to be transparent. I know Declan a long time, and we started playing rugby together. Was it December 1980 Christmas?
Yeah, up to Belfast, wasn't it?
NIFC.
Yeah, we thought we were like the special ones heading up.
It's very, very interesting. But
handing cans at the back of the train.
Well, I didn't drink in those days, so okay. I definitely didn't do that. Declan, you've had a fabulous career, fabulous traveling around the world. Do you want to give us just a quick overview of the journey per se?
When we set up Ryanair in the middle 80s, nobody knew where it was going to go. And I was really jack of all trades, and it was a live MBA. It took about 12 years to IPO and nearly went wallop, bankrupt 13 times in those 12 years, loads and loads of times. So I think what happens then is you get a resilience. Sometimes you get confidence. And I just said in the early, I think it was 04 or 05, 2004 or 05, I just said to everybody, I want to try this model elsewhere. And we did it in Singapore, and we did it with Tiger, and we did it in the USA in a mezzanine deal with Allegiant. And then we did it in Mexico for 10 years with an airline down there called Viva Aerobus. And now we're in Colombia with Viva Air. But we always exit. That's the key thing. We don't keep the shares and we move on. And it kind of works really well that way.
Interesting. So after Colombia, what's next is...
There's loads of opportunities. Aviation's in the shithouse, if you don't mind me using that French. But there's loads of opportunities, and not all the opportunities will be as operators, maybe as suppliers or whatever. So I'm in phase 3 of my life, and I have a lot of things I want to do. It mightn't be all work. And on the philanthropy side, I always wonder about that word, but anyway, on the philanthropy side,
It's Greek, actually. I looked it up.
Okay, good man. I couldn't even spell it. But anyway, to be serious about it, just this, we closed down the One Foundation in 2013, which was a great decision. We said we were only going to operate it for 10 years, and everybody worked to that agenda and made our decisions really good. We opened it up again in 2016 because of the Syrian refugee crisis, and that's just something I feel very passionate about, and I get really upset when Ireland don't meet their quotas on taking in refugees. We're only at half of our quotas and so on. So I think phase 3 of my life, a lot of it will be to do with refugees. And some of the scary things now, guys, is the talk of climate refugees. That
the temperatures are rising and people.
Yeah, and they're saying, Jim, and you guys know. I'm not too sure Amy's been there yet, but you guys know Vietnam. And, for the Mekong to rise even a meter or 2 meters seemingly affects 10 million people. So we're going to have refugees because of climate. And maybe it's the good thing about COVID, because I think climate change is being tagged to it, or I think the politicians are being very clever to say, you think COVID's bad, let's look at climate change.
And your existing programs or existing involvement with refugees, do you want to share some of the kind of the experiences?
Well,
and really my questions around, we all hear this, and I've been privileged to be in some places. Amy as well. Amy's been in Africa. We're in a very cocooned world over here, where we have water, we have a roof over our head. Nobody's going to really hurt us. Do you want to? Yeah.
So one of our actor programs is with UNICEF in the Zatari camp, which is the third largest camp in Jordan. And I loved in January, our advisory group in one said to them, what can we do to help around March? That's when COVID really kicked in. And we said to the group, what can we do about helping the kids in the camp? And all our programs, as you know, I think, James, are related to social entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs to bring kids, teenage kids and secondary kids to look at skill sets and so on and so on. And one of the lovely things about Lebanon is a lot of our programs introduce girls to becoming repair people for phones, mobile phones. And first of all, it's a move away from a culture where normally girls aren't done, don't get involved with IT or engineering or anything else. And, when you're in that environment and you can't afford another mobile phone, there's nothing more important than one of your kids or one of your family being able to repair a phone and so on. The story I like about this year is we asked the kids themselves in Zatari what they wanted. And they actually just wanted to increase in broadband. And they wanted it to be more fast and more capable and so on. So there's kind of jokes around the table. The motivation with all the kids was everything's down to education. And, can you imagine handling COVID in a camp? Like, social distancing is a word for wealthy people and people who have money. You can't social distance in Colombia or Jordan and so on. So if you just kind of try to park in your mind the sadness and the horrific positions that COVID would be in any of the camps. But I just love that the kids were focused on their education and they wanted to improve the Wi-Fi. And we said, no problem. And actually it became a collaborative thing where we got involved with the local telecom provider down there. And we were able to get improved Wi-Fi. But then the joke ran around the table about them using Netflix. And I said, I don't care what they use it for. That if that's what they want, let's do it, Yeah. And we expected, like all teenagers, we expected something to be a bit kind of, something to do with helping them with, I don't know, more soccer balls or more gear they need or a little cinema or something like that. But no, it was education and Wi-Fi, So I know that ticks a lot of boxes for teenagers, but I thought it was great. And kind of when you think of places like Jordan, you think of PPE needed or masks or whatever you want to call it. But they wanted Wi-Fi and that's what they got. It's great.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. And again, just those young women and young men.
Yeah.
What's their future? I mean, in the simple sense of
Jordan's probably one of the most amazing countries in the world for me because I think they have about up to 3 million, certainly near that number of refugees. A lot of them go back to the 70s and are Palestinian. I think half of them are Palestinian who don't have paperwork. So it's bad enough to be a refugee, but refugee without paperwork is, a very difficult situation. Do you ever see them going back to Palestine? I don't know. But Jordan's and by the way, it's one of the countries in the Middle East that doesn't have resources. So it's, it has a pile of US Air Force bases, which is fine because they get huge amounts of contribution to the economy. But it's hard to see, Jim. Like, what I hope is a Bill Gates or a Mary Robinson comes out. Like, that's what we would really love to do, is get a rock star come out of these camps, and then people start focusing in that these are really hardworking people and clever and so on. So, some kind of new technology or new equipment that could come out of the camps. These people are they're so innovative and creative. So I hate to think what the future is going to be like, because I think what's happened in the world, we're getting a little deep here, but I think what's happened in the world is people are going to start focusing in on, who can afford vaccines and all that kind of stuff. And I don't trust big pharma and so on. But anyway, phase 3 for me is going to be a lot of this stuff.
Okay, that's a reality.
Yeah.
And just moving swiftly back to your career, and I do recollect you telling me a story that one of your first jobs in Ryanair was as a baggage handler, and you weren't very good at it, if I recall.
I was regarded as a bit soft by the guys and so on, but we regularly used to go on the ramp, and I had done it previous to Ryanair when I worked in America West and Phoenix and so on. And there's no better way to understand an operation than it doesn't have to be baggage handler, but being on the ramp. My favorite job I've ever done in my life is, you might see them around airports or airplanes, is the guys with the red caps. And they're like, for me, they're like the British Rail dispatchers who are world class. And those trains go out at 07 or whatever time on the hour and so on. And when you're a dispatcher on the ground, you can tell the pilots what to do. You can tell the fuelers what to do. You can tell, because you're just in charge of getting the airplane out there and so on. So, yeah, it was the kind of atmosphere we were trying to create in Ryanair. And, my brother Carl was captain there, and they'd all say to me, the only thing you're allowed different if you're a captain is your shoes. So we used to call Cathal Captain Gucci. So I'd say, Jesus, Dad, Captain Gucci's on this one. So it's great. And listen, the night we IPO'd is one of my favorite stories, because I've had a couple of pints with the lads, used to play soccer with them and all that kind of stuff. Shite at that as well. And, one of the ground handlers, I think, got about 5,000 euro in 1997 from the IPO. And, he was putting it down as a deposit against his house. And, that's special.
That's kind of cool. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Any mistakes you want to share with us? Just funny ones and serious ones, or funny and serious ones?
I don't know. I think part of the problem, Jim, is in aviation, none of the mistakes are small. If you get a lease rate wrong on an airplane, or the fuel price, let's talk about fuel for a sec. British Airways are of the view, and I think they're right, that you hedge 50% of your fuel, and you let the other of it, just the price set wherever the marketplace is. They take the point that they're not fuel speculators, and look at the price of fuel at the moment; it's so low and so on. So it's very easy to say, Jesus, fuel's very low, hedge it. The hedges cost a lot of money, and then it goes lower. So there's been buckets loads of mistakes. I always get cut out on this question because I just can't remember them. But Jesus, there were so many of them. And
what you learn from them, I suppose maybe that's the key.
I think that the thing I learned most is about people. That sometimes I think we judge people too quickly in a work environment. And there was a CFO at the time, and he became a good friend of mine. And I blamed him for the problems we had on cash, that he should have been better and so on. Michael actually had the opposite opinion, and said that we actually need him, and he had respect for the guy because of the amount of pressure. Like, he was effectively trying to manage the financial department on his own and so on. So you learn that about people. You make sure you never do them again, and you have people around you who also have the scars from that. And the team in Irelandia, would know. Like, for example, in when we were setting up Tiger in Singapore, and our partners were Singapore Airlines, one of the guys announced that they had given all the cabin crew free taxi rides in the morning because of there was no public transport. I know what they were trying to do. That costs us about 500 quid a head to get out of it in Ryanair. What you actually do is you ring up ring up all the taxi firms, and you say, who wants to bid for our work? And then it becomes a couple of euros a head for the girls to pay. You don't make it a benefit for the cabin crew if you want to keep fares around $25, $30. But listen, there's been so many mistakes. Just aviation's. It's just.
And at the moment, where's the future in aviation? You must be.
I think it's going to shrink. You know what? We were doing really well. We had a board meeting at the beginning of March in Peru. And the guys from Dublin were down, and so Howard Miller and so on. The guys came down for the board meeting. The team in Irelandia came down. And we knew that the first quarter was done and dusted with regard to our results. And we were really doing well. And then COVID came along. So where do I think you're going to see a lot less airlines. I think traveling for romance and leisure and family will be fine. But, will you take your family, Jim, on a long-haul flight? The thought that somebody may be infected, sitting in an hour for airplane for 13. I think business class and long-haul flights are going to get affected So, and it's a bit ironic for us in Colombia, because in Colombia, our airplanes are extremely clean, and you've heard all the stories about the air filtration systems on airplanes, but all the buses are packed and nobody's wearing masks, and so it's just, somebody asked me this question recently, Jim. I think it was Vincent Wall, because I did a podcast with him recently, and in News Talk, and he said, "Where do I think it's going to end up?" And I said, "Be careful to try to write history before it's finished." I'm not too sure where it's going to end up. It's going to be, maybe it become like the oil business or banks, that you just have fewer number of players.
Yeah, and the people who are more dexterous and flexible and creative will be the ones that...
Yeah, and then if you take banking as an example, and all our kids are doing it now, and I've gone into it, you start using Revolut. So there'll be innovations in aviation, I'm sure. And, IT has helped aviation big time, because prior to internet, our distribution cost, guys, was around 10%. Now it's like 1 or 2%. So that's
okay, different.
Yeah, for sure.
What advice would you give a 22-year-old graduate coming out of college now, or coming into the workforce as to...
Yeah, I worry, and Amy's looking at me here. I worry, and so I have Anna, who's the same age, and having lunch with her today, thank God. I haven't seen her in a while. I worry there's a tendency, and Jim, you probably are more orientated towards this than the kids today. I wonder, are they overstudying? I have a pal, I can't tell you where he's from, but he's from one of the universities, and he's an economics professor. And he said he didn't need to do the masters, but everything he learned in the college was outside the lecture hall. It was how to treat women, and how to date, and how to survive cooking, and puncturing, repairing punctures in the bike in the piss and rain, and realizing that lads from Kilkenny are incredibly brilliant rugby players as well. So I hate the idea of what's happening because of COVID in colleges. And, I just think, I want to be careful about the way I say this, but the first thing I do when I see somebody's CVs is their hobbies. By and large, if somebody...
So you start at the bottom, where most people put them.
Yeah.
And work back up.
Yeah, but they're bullshitting straight away. Like, I met a girl there a while ago, and she was talking to me about Sri Lanka, and I know it well. She'd never been. Like, right, no, right, and, But,
and when did she realise that she had just...
She just talked her way through it with, the red going down her neck and all this kind of stuff. But, the other bit about that, the important bit is, let's say Amy loves, which I know, everything to do with Italy, Siena, and cooking, and your granddad, and all that kind of stuff. If I see that Amy, and you can see it a mile away, and particularly if they're seeing me, they're kind of planking it a bit already. So what I say to them is, talk to me about Siena. And then they light up. It's like a flower opening up, and so on. So I'm talking to you a little bit about, so the advice is not to lose confidence. And that's a hard thing to do, no matter what age you are in life. And B, masters and PhDs, I'm going to get shot for saying this, they're fine if you want to be an academic for the rest of your life. I want somebody who's worked in Ryanair or Aldi or Food Cloud or you name it. I want live stuff. I don't want theoretical. I'm not saying people shouldn't do university.
No, I would have similar views myself. I'm being careful. Obviously, it's. But that the system is the system, so you have to deal with what's in front of you. But it's the other skills, this kind of the below the line skills, the soft skills that you may not learn in an academic environment for obvious reasons of life skills, I suppose.
And if you take, I'm really going to get shot now on this. You take barristers. Most barristers I've met feel entitled. And Harper Lee was asked, who wrote Kill a Mockingbird, which is very topical at the moment. Is it a racist book or not? But anyway, she was asked once, what's the dirtiest word in the English dictionary? And she said entitlement. I always find barristers entitled, and the last thing they should be is entitled, because you have two entitled people negotiating for somebody who has a farming or a land problem down in Cork. So we just have to. I think on an optimistic basis for the 22-year-old, I think education is going to change big time, and that's going to make it more
1 year degrees kind of thing.
Where modules,
modules, and real what the business wants.
Yeah.
So what would you look for? So say you're hiring someone. I'm just an office manager. Just use that. So what are you looking for from that person? It's just a human now.
It depends on the role, but
say an office manager. So in that kind of
a bit close to home. The lady I picked was a single parent, and it wasn't because she was a woman. It's just if you're a single parent, you know how to fucking manage your time. It's life experiences, It's you don't have to be a do-gooder. You don't have to go to Jordan and all that kind of stuff. I think we know some of them, Jim. The guys who grew up. When's the last? And I sound like I'm 100 here. The J1 visa was a great process for the Irish, and none of the kids are doing it now. The amount of John Good was just here a second ago. John worked 2 or 3 summers on building sites in London. I'm not saying everybody has to be, a blue collar worker, but that's what I love. If you talk to somebody in the horse industry, they never tell you what time they get up every morning. They get up at 4. They're cleaning, mucking out stables. They're just,
and everybody's equal in that sense.
And everybody's equal in that sense. Yeah.
And your horse, I don't know a lot about it, or the care of the horses is as good as the weakest link. So if someone doesn't put the right water down, that horse can be affected.
Yeah, and if you're going into a competition like the Olympics or whatever, or some amateur meet down in Kerry or something, if the horse are not right, you're not going. So that I just there's a place for academics and academia. We're all going to get a shot here now, Jim. I walk around UCD. It hasn't changed in 30 years. There's no hub to it. There's no. I love when you go to Galway and you open up the car and you show my age, UCG, but NUIG. There's atmosphere comes into the car because of the place and so on. So, I think there's a bit too much D4 focusing on masters and PhDs. And
do you think that's a driven by profit?
Nah, I don't think so. I think it's driven by parents' desire for their kids to move on. But, how do you move on if you went to Rock and then you go to UCD? I just don't know it. But I think to the 22-year-old is, obviously do what you love. If you don't do what you love. A pal of mine was talking to a futurologist, and the comment was, we don't need maths in the future because our computers will work out what we're trying to do. And certainly you and I weren't great at maths to learn.
Speak for yourself.
Okay. And it was advice to kids that you're going to have 4 different careers. And, I think when you start off as being a barrister or being somebody in one of the big accountancy firms, you kind of think, maybe I'll be an accountant for all my life or whatever. So I think if you thought you were going to have 4 careers from day one, and you've had, I think as gas, you're interviewing entrepreneurs, you really need to interview yourself, how many times you've sold businesses successfully, but you never talk about that. But moving on from that, that's the live stuff, you hear all these stories, look at Brodie Sweeney. He's done an amazing job.
He's remarkable.
Yeah, he is a remarkable.
His energy,
and some of his stories about making sure the kids were born at the weekend because it helped cash and all these kind of stories. It's just brilliant, Yeah,
and he's been
and there's a man who learned from his mistakes.
Yeah, and his ego, and he's just so.
And he'll tell you, Brodie will tell you that his ego went nuts, and he decided to become a Fine Gael TD for Clontarf, and he got his ass kicked and so on. So I think for kids that education is important, but I love this. There was a Jewish Israeli ex-president was asked about, he was 83 and he was on Amapor, that lady who does the great interviews in the States, and he was asked about death, and he says, "Young lady, I have too many books to read. You learn more from books than you do from and life than you do from it." I just think about college, and one of my kids recently said they didn't want to go to college anymore, and I said, "Great, it's not for everybody."
It's a provocative space, because I suppose we have a program and society devises a program. Good, predominantly, if it makes sense for good reason. Yeah. But when the world changes, to actually change the program takes quite a while.
I wonder, guys, would Ireland change if you had to pay like the US fees for colleges? Because a lot of people will be saying, "I'm not paying $70,000 for the kids to get educated on the screen, online and all that kind of stuff." So
interesting.
We're lucky here.
Right, Declan, kind of final question for you is around workplace stress, mindfulness. So in the world we're in now, and for young people in particular who have got their qualifications, have come into the job and are moving themselves through their job to the best of their ability. Have you any thoughts around that or comments?
Yeah, the first thing I wrote down there, I think they're in a better place in some ways because, and you would know this, James, through SEI and also Jigsaw, the whole issue of mental health is now in the papers all the time. And forget COVID, it was in the papers prior to that. And that's a big achievement for Ireland. So I think there's more of a sympathy. As you know, I suffer from depression myself, and it makes you a better person because effectively you go, "Oh shit, how can anybody operate when I was that low?" and so on. The social media bit, I just don't know how. I think it's kind of easy for us when we're in our 50s to kind of say we're dinosaurs and we don't really understand it and so on. But one of my sons is an actor, and I just think that would be terrible to be in that area, and that's all about rejection, and your ass is too big, or your nose is wrong, or your accent's wrong, and all that kind of stuff. So I think I don't know, and maybe people maybe like Shane Holland and stuff in Google should be asked, like, why isn't there more leniency in companies when it comes to social media? And 2 hours every day, people don't touch the phone, and I know that'd be kind of against Google's kind of business.
So take a break,
because they're not taking a break at home.
No.
And what is it? Telefonica say, I was at a presentation. The joke was, the issue is they have 400 million customers. 95% of their customers have their phone within a meter of themselves 24 hours a day. And then the guy who was presenting, he was very good, the CEO, he says, sometimes the first and the last thing you touch in your day and at night is your phone.
It's your phone.
It's not your partner, it's not your kids, it's your phone.
That's true.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah, it's scary. And so I don't know how. I'm kind of glad I'm not. That we. I don't know when did we get mobile phones, in the late '80s, early '90s, whenever it was. But I just kind of glad we kind of skipped that.
Okay. And my last question: 5 words that you'd use to describe your journey, your career.
Intense. Scary, then came confidence, then came acceptance, and then came no fear.
No fear. That's a lovely way to finish. Declan, I would like to thank you so much for giving your time today.
Thank you,
and it's always good. Always good to, and Amy is our sound technician here who's keeping us all guys all in place. So thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you for listening to The Career Scoop, brought to you by Elevate Career Advice and Elevate Executive Selection. I'm James Fitzsimons, and I hope you've enjoyed listening.